I think that's all I have for you guys. Thank you.
Inviting me to be here, I thought about the word woman, and I thought about what that means for me, where I will tell people that I identify interchangeably as a woman and as genderqueer, because genderqueer is the word that reflects my internal understanding of my gender and the way that I feel about myself, but woman still describes the way in which I interact with the world, and the way in which I interact with health institutions, and the way in which I interact with my safety on the street at night, or when I'm bartending, or all of these things, and they're still present. And as a genderqueer person who doesn't bind, and I don't pack on the regular and that kind of thing, my anatomy is still very visible, even under like baggy clothing I'm wearing now. So I still interact with that word, and I also don't want to displace myself from that word, because I love women, and I admire women, and I love the things that I know about myself from growing up in a world that treats women the way it treats women. And I never ever want to distance myself from that at all. So I thought about like whether it was even fair for me to say yes to this, but then there was an honorarium, so I said yes. And I moved past that question. So I wish that was a joke, but it wasn't. So then I was thinking about performance. And I was thinking about what does it mean to like make theater, and what does it mean to make performance, and are we making a marketable project, or are we social justice warriors, or are we both? And what's that relationship between societal value and entertainment? Because I think that we're always negotiating that world. And so it's like, is it more important to do something you feel is authentic and true and necessary, or is it more important to fill seats? And then in terms of thinking about myself as a leader, I thought about, yeah, how do you judge what it means to be a leader? Does it mean that you made a really big impact in one human being's life, or does it mean that you can sell out 300 seats and get the cover of like Now magazine and like do all these other things? What is the relationship between impact and visibility? And that's a thing that I'm constantly thinking about myself, or like questioning in terms of success, and questioning in terms of then work that I see getting more attention than work that I'm involved in, or work that people I admire are involved in, and wondering, is it like, let's say, straight cis male privilege that means that a play that I think is okay, but not necessarily better than other plays, gets mounted, and work of what I think is comparable or possibly a little bit better value isn't getting produced? And I think, is that an issue of privilege, and is that an issue of, yes, this idea of like male voice as a voice of authority? Or is that like, let's say, mythical like cis male straight white playwright just actually creating things that people want more? Because I could be really, really angry all the time, and I could say no one's paying attention to me for this reason, that reason, this identity checkbox, that identity checkbox, but I'm kind of done being angry, and I know that other people break through, so I think about, yeah, it has to be about supply and demand, because I am creating, as a performer, a product. So I was thinking about that relationship coming here today. The other thing I was thinking about was just like, what does it mean to be queer, and community and labels. And so especially, like, I will say that I'm comfortable calling myself a leader in terms of Too Queer, the bi-visibility cabaret that I run, because I know how much work it's taken, and I know how often I stand in the face of people, and I explain the project to them, and I say my labels, and I watch them still make jokes in my face, and it's not a sticker thing behind my back, and I recognize the way in which bisexual people are still so vilified and shunned in both straight and queer communities, and there's so many stigmas related to that. So I'm comfortable saying to be so openly out about being bisexual, and to do that explicitly for having that Googleability. there's a bi activist out of the States named Alil Cruz who I really admire and whose work I follow quite explicitly. And he made the point that he's very out about being bi and is so easily Googleable about that, and calls himself on Twitter a professional bisexual, which I love. For the purposes of like 5 or 10 years ago, when he needed to find other people like him to be findable, to be the person that he needed 5, 10 years ago. And I think in terms of, I was also thinking like what makes a leader? Like, is that a person just a lot of people are paying attention to, or is that an internal driving philosophy? Yeah, is that a label that other people ascribe to you, or is that a thing that you create in yourself? And that idea of being the person that a former version of you actually needed is a really guiding principle for me in what I do. So I was thinking about what it means to be a leader in the view of the bi cabaret that I run. Because oddly enough, I think that in the bisexual community it's actually much easier. It's one of the rare instances where it's easier to be a woman or read as a woman and have the label of bisexual be considered valid. There's a lot of stigma against bisexual men. And I remember the first time I put the cabaret together, I had no male-identified people apply to perform whatsoever. And it's still a real battle to find male-identified. It's very important to me to hold space for that. And I bussed someone in from Montreal last time to make that happen. Because there's quite a lot of stigma surrounding bisexual men. And it's related to HIV, it's related to a lot of things. So I was thinking about what it means to be in my body, and what my relationship internally and externally to gender and to maleness is. Because, for example, when I came out as bi in high school, I was sexually assaulted by a man, and a whole bunch of people saw it, and no one said anything. Well, the sexual assault wasn't like rape, it wasn't, to that extent, but it was certainly like, oh, hey, why is your hand on my cunt and on my breasts? That's not pleasant. Oh, the fact that I've come out as bi has made you view me as sexual object and just wanting of everything, and over-sexualized, just to be an over-sexualized person, or to be a person who is all about sex is often one of the stigmas associated with bisexuality, especially surrounding women. So I had, at the age of 14, this very kind of seminal, my relationship with men in terms of my bisexuality. That is a seminal experience. And now to turn around, a decade later, more than a decade later, and to be like, it is my actual place to make space for often cis men who are not comfortable with this label, or who have an even more difficult time owning spaces this label. So it makes me really, really think quite a lot about engaging in nuance and complexity and compassion, and getting really, really very, very practiced at looking at people who look like the people who hurt you and recognizing they're not the people that hurt you. Yeah. In terms of, I don't know if I qualify as a leader in terms of, outside of the work I do curating and producing the bi cabaret, but my own art practice, in terms of being a playwright, and in terms of being sometimes a visual artist and sometimes a performer, that work tends to be very body-centric and very raw and very visceral and very sexual, because I think that in the same way that I am constantly negotiating my internal and external relationship to maleness, the world that I grew up in and my seminal experiences were Britney Spears music videos, and were this very, to be successful and to garner attention, use your sexuality and your body as a thing you can cash in on. And maybe get attention that way and then funnel it in another way that's not expected. But I've been recognizing quite a lot lately the way in which I don't think of, again, how to make art about my life or about myself in a way that's marketable and popular and would be of interest to anyone without it incorporating my sexuality. And I'm a very sexual person, so I think at a certain point I thought, oh, that's why my work is inherently sexual, and now I'm starting to clock quite a lot that it's like, oh, I actually just never conceived of a way in which I could be an entertainer or a public figure and have that not be part of it. So that's a thing that's not part of the the cachet or the interest. So these are things I was thinking about today in terms of even just how do you what is in our bodies, in the bodies of the people on, like, sitting here right now, up here, how do you engage with an authentic expression of identity in relationship to all of this, in relationship to rape culture, in relationship to exotification, in relationship to objectification. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to just stop talking.
I was just going to clock.
Hey, thanks. Oh, fantastic. Great. It's done.
Love it. Well done. It's like the most self-regulating panel ever. And there's your time.
Okay, because we're all also administrators.
And possibly also socialize to make sure that we give others space.
Look at us sharing, equitably sharing space.
Yeah.